So here we go with Cooper Mays. I'm Dave Hooker. We're, of course, going to talk some Georgia with the Bulldogs coming up in Neyland Stadium and what should be a great atmosphere. And Cooper's appearance brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. The Vol Report with Cooper Mays brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Coop, first, before we look forward to the week, let's look back at Missouri. Your thoughts? I know that was a tough loss. How's morale, young man?
Yeah, no, it definitely was a tough loss. Nobody feels great after that, and nobody really should feel great. Um, Man, just got to figure out a way to finish these next 2 weeks the right way. But yeah, definitely not a good showing by us.
Did you have a feeling leading up to that game that things weren't settled, or was it a surprise as the game went on? Was it just one of those?
One of those.
So, at what point in the game were you like, "Uh oh, this could turn"?
I mean, I don't ever like think during the game like this could turn bad or whatever. I don't know. It's just every week in the SEC, doesn't matter who you play. There's teams that are good enough to take advantage of your mistakes, and teams that are good enough to beat you any week. So I mean, it's not really like a surprise. I mean, the margins of the game were so small, and then when you hurt yourself, it just exacerbates all that stuff anyway. So I mean, they're a really good football team, but we didn't do ourselves any favors. That's for sure.
Coop, you talked about those mistakes. What were some as one of the leaders of this team? And you can either talk about offensive line or the entire offense or the whole team, whatever you think. What were some of those mistakes you'd like to see get cleaned up?
Just the playing penalties was a big one for us. Playing penalties are going to happen just if you're playing hard. Like stuff happens, but man, it seemed like anytime we had something positive going, we just shot ourselves in the foot a little bit. So just stuff that we can clean up.
It's interesting how you phrase it. And you've always been a guy that owns it, so to speak. It there are some people that have blamed officials over the past couple of games. You guys haven't gotten a lot of calls. The officiating has been questionable, in my opinion. I know you probably don't want to go there, but you kind of took it on yourself just then when you said the mistakes that we make. How much or how important is that mindset right now?
I mean, I think it's super important. I think the only way you can get better at anything in life is if you're able to take accountability and put blame on your own shoulders and figure out ways to fix it. You can. I mean, nobody's going to be perfect, including referees or anything. So I don't even really, me, I don't even really think about the refs. It's kind of like a non-factor in my mind. Like, yeah, they probably have missed some calls throughout the season, but it should never be in the referee's hands, in my opinion.
Yep. Fair enough. Now, I wrote on offthehooksports.com the best way to forget about this loss for Tennessee's fan base would be, hey, to beat Georgia, who isn't number one in the nation according to the college football playoff, but probably should be and might be on Tuesday. What do you think of that game coming up?
It's going to be, we haven't looked at them yet, but you know what kind of game it's going to be. Um, Super physical, a tough game, and probably the toughest one you'll get all year. And we gotta come right and come prepared. So we gotta have a great week of practice, and then we gotta come with the right mentality and be physical.
As far as last year, and the game's in Neyland Stadium, of course, this year, but last year there at Sanford Stadium, it seemed like maybe that was the only time that noise kind of got to you guys. Was it more noise, or was it more what they did with you guys?
I think a big part of the, I think a big part of it was the noise. I mean, they definitely had a really loud crowd. Probably one of the loudest crowds that I've faced on the road. And it kind of stopped our momentum. With if we aren't getting a good rhythm down, then it's hard for us to kind of get momentum going with our offense and everything. So we had a lot of false start penalties and a lot of stuff like that kind of led to us getting off rhythm and kind of off our game, so to speak. So it it poses problems, but obviously that won't be a factor this week.
And for those that don't know, I'd say everybody knows at this point, but you have ties to Georgia in that your brother Cade played there before transferring back to Tennessee. So, what are your thoughts on the two programs? Having seen them as a family, a visitor, I'm sure, a prospect. What are some of the differences between the two programs? You think?
Some of the differences. Man, not as much as everybody would like to think. College football can only be, there's only so many different ways to do it. There's only so many differences that can be had between a lot of places. But genuinely, when you're in the SEC, or generally, as I should say, in the SEC, a lot of programs kind of run the same kind of a lot of the same stuff and a lot of the same ways to win. I mean, you there's only a couple ways to win the SEC, and that's by being the most physical and disciplined team, and that's kind of the way you got to run your program. And I think everybody's kind of gotten to that point here. And obviously Georgia does a really good job of that, but I mean, not a crazy amount of differences.
As far as their approach defensively, how are they the same or different as other teams? Do they remind you of anyone that you've played in their schematic approach?
Yeah, Bama. I mean, obviously he's got the same kind of the tree or whatever they call it. He's from that Saban coaching tree, so a lot of them kind of play around the same stuff. They're gonna have a lot of different pressures that they're gonna throw at you. Mix of 4 down and 3 down. Just playing hard nosed football up front. Georgia and Bama don't really do much different. They gonna line up and play football, and they're gonna say we can beat y'all the way we want to play. So it's it's a hard nosed brand of football, but that's the kind of stuff we play in SEC.
Well, and yeah, I wanted to ask you about that as well. As far as being hard nosed, do you feel like that this is your football team right now is where it needs to be as far as being physical, Coop, or is that something that's continues to be a work in progress?
No, I think we're physical. I definitely. I don't think that's any of the problem.
Yeah, and is go ahead. You were about to speak.
I mean, you don't get to the point we are in the season, by not being physical. Doesn't really. If you aren't physical in the SEC, you don't win. You don't win more than but a couple ball games probably. So
Yep. Great point. And the run game has been there for you guys for the most part all year. So that's definitely evidence of that. At this point in the season, Coop, every team has injuries, but it seems like you guys have had injuries to key positions at bad times, you included. Um, do, what are your thoughts on the way things have unfolded injury wise this year?
I haven't really thought about it much. Like obviously, I've been a part of it, so that sucked. But I mean, injuries are just going to happen. It's football. If you look at every program in the country, there's going to be injuries at their key positions probably, and if they haven't, then it's probably going to happen. Or they've been just really blessed and really lucky, and more power to them. But injury is not a. I mean, football is not an injury-free game. It's 100% injury kind of guaranteed. It just depends how severe kind of the thing is. But yeah, I mean, we've been hit with a couple big ones, but it's how it goes sometimes. How the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, that's true. And I be interesting to see how you continue to patch those holes. You mentioned how much you like Squirrel White. He was obviously targeted quite a few times against Missouri. Do you feel like his best football is still ahead of him as far as his top end, so to speak?
Yeah, I'm sure. I like you guys know I don't really know much about the wide receiver stuff, but
But you did give me the Dylan. You gave me the Dylan Sampson insight though, so that was good.
oh well, yeah. I mean, I was going to keep going. I don't know much about wide receivers, but just as a human, Squirrel's a sophomore. He's a young guy. So I know I got a lot better for my sophomore year. I'm not really sure like what he needs to do or what could be done. Obviously, I'm not going to speak on that, but just getting older and stronger, he's going to get faster, and just there's going to be a lot of stuff that he grows with out throughout his career, and he's going to be already is, but he's going to be a great year.
When was your biggest jump as a player? Was it freshman to sophomore, sophomore to junior, junior to senior? And I know there's some injuries in there that have to be factored in. So your path is different and unique than anyone else's. But when did you feel like you made the biggest jump, like Squirrel could do?
Sophomore to junior was for me the biggest jump. I think a lot of people make that jump though. I think just really getting it figured out. When you're young, there's just so much on your mind and you don't know what you don't know kind of thing. There's just so much stuff that you are so naive to, and you learn throughout different ways to do stuff, and just moreover just the baseline of just growing up and being mature and knowing how to handle your work that you do better. I know I wasn't attacking life the same way I am now as I was when I was an 18-year-old. I didn't take stuff as serious as I needed to probably. And there's a lot of stuff that you do differently when you're older, or you should do differently if you mature and grow. So there's there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but growing up from like a freshman to a junior, the jump is pretty substantial.
Yeah, no doubt about it. As I want to ask you a couple other things about Georgia. I remind you that the Vol Report with Cooper Mays is brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters. Check them out. City Heating and Air Conditioning. We certainly appreciate them. American Standard will build you to a higher standard. As far as Georgia, have you thought about what that would mean to not only this team, but kind of your career as being able to being you would be able to say you beat the big three on Tennessee's schedule at some point in your career, Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. Do you how much have you thought about that at all?
Man, no, I just got my butt whooped by Missouri. I haven't really thought much about that yet, but I'm sure we will all week. I'm sure it'll be a prevalent thought, but no, not as of right now.
What do you think for you personally having the ties to Georgia a win would mean for you and your family?
I would like to beat them just because they're who we play and everything, but and like people probably think I'm just like saying that as coach speak, but it genuinely doesn't matter to me. Like some stuff just doesn't really. I don't know. It just doesn't really.
Well, I mean, a win is a win is a win. I think that you have the right mindset of taking things kind of one day at a time. Some guy in the SEC West calls it the process. So I think his name's Nick Saban. But when did you become? Because you talked about your maturity just then. When did you become a believer in like the process, the day to day, taking things seriously? Was there any sort of mind change that happened earlier in your career?
Man, I didn't I didn't really my first 2 years at Tennessee, I played a lot of football and started a lot of games, but, I wasn't living the right way, and I wasn't doing anything bad or anything, but I wasn't sleeping right, I wasn't eating right, I wasn't drinking enough water. I mean, just, like, simple stuff that all the things I don't know, it just kinda clicked in my mind that there's so many things that you can control, like, that I wasn't taking control of, and kind of growing up and being a grown man is realizing you gotta live a certain way if you want to achieve the results you want. And I kind of realized in my life what I wanted was way more important than what I was doing and everything. So I just know that there was a lot of sacrifices to be made, and there's a point in everybody's football career when you kind of it clicks for you, where you kind of grow up and you're like, I got to take this way more seriously. I got to eat right, do right, sleep right, take my vitamins, all I mean, there's just so much stuff that you can do to give yourself an advantage. And I wasn't doing all of them or even nearly all of them. And I don't know, kind of on the way to my junior year, I found a way to kind of figure it out a little bit. But
Yeah. And was there anything that caused that, or was it just the immediacy of you might be playing that year?
no, I mean, I played all through my freshman and sophomore year, so I knew I was playing. I got to the point where I started living alone. You know, I lived in the dorms and have roommates and everything. And just when you get to your when you get for me, I do better when I'm by myself. Like I don't know why it is, but when I live alone and everything, I can truly kind of sit there and kind of take control of my life a little bit, you know, because everything's for me, it's like everything's on your shoulders, which a lot of people that kind of brings a lot of stress to them. But for me, I love having everything like everything is in your control, you know, and there's something really liberating about that, in my opinion. I like you know taking control of my life and whatever. It's made me a better person. So that kind of helped me. I kind of got my life together when I started living by myself and everything. So
Yeah, roommates are for the birds.
I don't
I don't care how nice they are. Roommates are for the birds.
yeah, man. It's just I don't know. I think that's just kind of how it was. My mom said the same thing when she was in college. She didn't do well living with other people. She only did well when she lived alone. So
Yeah. He's Cooper Mays. The Vol Report brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, Tennessee, Georgia on Saturday. For Cooper Mays, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.